The sky over Montana was clear and blue, the kind of day that made people want to step outside and enjoy the fresh air. But on this particular afternoon, no one was thinking about picnics or hikes. Instead, thousands of eyes were fixed upward, watching as something strange descended from the heavens. It wasn't an airplane or a satellite falling back to Earth. This was something far bigger, far stranger, and far more alien. The object shimmered like liquid metal in the sunlight, its surface smooth and flawless. It hovered for a moment, silent and still, before slowly lowering itself onto the flat expanse of a nearby field. The ground trembled slightly as the massive ship touched down, sending up clouds of dust that swirled around its base. People gathered at a safe distance, some clutching cameras, others holding their children close. No one spoke. The air felt heavy, charged with anticipation and fear. After what seemed like hours but was really only minutes, a hatch opened on the side of the ship. A ramp extended downward, and out stepped a figure unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Tall and imposing, the creature wore golden armor that gleamed even brighter than the ship itself. Its skin was a deep shade of purple, almost black, and its eyes glowed faintly, like embers in a dying fire. Behind it, more figures emerged, each dressed in similar armor but lacking the same commanding presence. At the front of the crowd stood Liam Carter, a man in his mid-30s with short brown hair and glasses perched on his nose. He was a biologist. By trade, someone who spent most of his days studying plants and animals rather than standing face to face with extraterrestrial beings. Beside him was Olivia Grant, a woman with sharp features and an even sharper mind. As an astrophysicist, she had spent years searching for signs of life beyond Earth. Now, here it was, standing right in front of her. She should have been thrilled. Instead, she felt uneasy. The leader of the aliens, later identified as Kelther, stepped forward until he stood just a few feet away from the humans. His movements were deliberate, calculated, as if every step carried meaning. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the air, amplified by some unseen technology. "You call this planet home?" he asked, sweeping one armored hand across the horizon. His tone wasn't curious, it was mocking. "We have tamed worlds where acid rains burn flesh from bone, where gravity crushes all but the strongest beings, where predators hunt by sensing fear itself. Your soft world is no challenge." Liam glanced at Olivia, raising an eyebrow. Did he just call Earth soft? He muttered under his breath. Olivia didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on Kelther, her expression unreadable. She had expected arrogance from the aliens, but this level of condescension caught her off guard. It wasn't just pride, it was disdain. As though they viewed humanity as little more than insects beneath their boots. Kelther continued, pacing back and forth in front of the assembled crowd. "We are the Vorin," he announced, his glowing eyes scanning the faces before him. "Survivors of Deathworlds. Conquerors of the impossible. And now, we will demonstrate why your species cannot compare." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people looked angry, others scared. A few laughed nervously, unsure whether to take the alien's words seriously. Liam leaned closer to Olivia again, whispering so only she could hear. "What do you think they're planning?" he asked. "I don't know," Olivia replied, her voice low and tense. "But whatever it is, it can't be good." Kelther raised a hand, silencing the murmurs with a single gesture. "To prove our superiority," he said, "we will choose one location on your planet as our proving ground. There, we will show you how easily we adapt to any environment, overcome any obstacle. You may observe, but do not interfere. Do you understand?" No one responded. The silence stretched on, uncomfortable and awkward. Finally, A government official standing near the front cleared his throat and nodded. "We understand," he said, his voice wavering slightly. "Good," Kelthor replied, turning to address his companions. After a brief exchange in a language no one could understand, he turned back to the humans. "We have chosen Alaska as our test site. Its frozen wilderness will serve as an adequate challenge." Liam groaned softly. Of all the places on Earth, why did the aliens pick Alaska? Sure, it was cold and remote, but it wasn't exactly the harshest environment on the planet. Still, he couldn't deny that it would present certain challenges, especially for creatures who clearly preferred warmer climates. As the Vorin reboarded their ship and prepared to leave, Liam and Olivia exchanged another glance. They both knew this wasn't going to end well. For the aliens, maybe. But for humanity? This was shaping up to be a disaster waiting to happen. Later that evening, Liam and Olivia sat in a small conference room at a nearby military base. Maps of Alaska covered the table in front of them, along with notes and diagrams scribbled hastily during earlier meetings. Around them, other scientists and officials debated the best course of action. Should they try to communicate further with the Vorin, or focus on preparing for whatever they might do next? "I still can't believe they called Earth soft," Liam said, shaking his head. "If they think Alaska is bad, wait until they meet Jack Harper." Olivia frowned. "Who's Jack Harper?" "He's a survivalist who lives out there." Liam explained. "Totally off the grid. Knows the land better than anyone else. If anyone can give these aliens a run for their money, it's him." Olivia considered this for a moment. "Do you think we should reach out to him?" "It's worth a shot," Liam replied. "He might not trust us, but if we explain what's happening, he might help. At the very least, he'll keep an eye on them." Before they could discuss it further, the door opened and a young soldier entered the room. "Excuse me," he said, addressing the group. "We've received reports of unusual activity in Denali National Park. Looks like the Vorin have already started setting up camp." Everyone fell silent. The aliens weren't wasting any time. Whatever they had planned, it was clear they intended to make a statement, not just to humanity, but to themselves. Kelthor's boastful words echoed in Liam's mind. "Your soft world is no challenge." Liam sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Well," he said, looking at Olivia, "looks like we're about to find out just how tough Earth really is." Olivia nodded, her expression grim. "Let's hope Jack Harper feels the same way." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. In the distance, the silhouette of the alien ship loomed against the darkening sky. Somewhere in Alaska, the stage was being set for a confrontation unlike anything the world had ever seen. The Vorin ship landed in the heart of Alaska's wilderness, its metallic surface gleaming even in the dim light of the overcast sky. The aliens wasted no time setting up their camp near Denali National Park, surrounded by towering mountains and endless stretches of frozen tundra. To anyone else, the location might have seemed desolate and barren. But to Kelthor and his crew, it was perfect, a blank canvas on which they could paint their dominance. Kelthor stood tall, surveying the landscape with a mixture of pride and disdain. "This will do," he said, addressing his subordinates. His voice carried authority, but there was also an edge of impatience. "Begin preparations. We will show these humans what true survival looks like." Behind him, the other Vorin moved with precision, unpacking equipment and assembling structures that shimmered faintly as if made of some advanced material unknown to Earth. Their technology was impressive, sleek, and efficient, designed for environments far harsher than this one. Still, Kelthor couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment. Where were the acid storms? The monstrous predators? The crushing gravity? Compared to the Deathworlds they had conquered, This place felt almost tame. Unbeknownst to the Vorin, however, they weren't alone. Not far away, hidden among the mann trees, a pair of sharp eyes watched their every move. Jack Harper crouched low, his breath visible in the cold air. He was a wiry man in his 40s, with weathered skin and a scruffy beard that matched the ruggedness of his surroundings. Dressed in layers of thick clothing and carrying only a rifle and a backpack, Jack blended seamlessly into the snowy landscape. Jack had been tracking the strange lights in the sky for days before finally stumbling upon the alien encampment. First, he thought they were military personnel conducting experiments, something he'd seen before in this remote part of the world. But when he got close enough to see the odd shapes and glowing symbols adorning their equipment, he realized these visitors weren't human. Curiosity burned within him, but so did caution. Jack didn't trust outsiders, especially ones who looked as out of place as these creatures. For now, he decided to stay hidden, observing their movements and learning what he could. Whatever they were planning, he wanted to be ready. Back at the base near Montana, Liam Carter and Olivia Grant pored over satellite images of the Vorin camp. Alongside them were members of a hastily assembled research team tasked with monitoring the situation and advising the government on how to respond. So far, the orders from above were clear. Observe, but do not interfere. Liam leaned forward, pointing to a cluster of structures on the screen. They're using energy shields, he said, squinting at the faint glow surrounding the camp. That's why we haven't seen any sign of wildlife getting too close. Those things are keeping everything out, including the cold. Olivia nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. It makes sense. If they've survived places worse than this, they'd need something like that to protect themselves. But I wonder, how long can they keep it up? What do you mean? Asked one of the researchers, a young woman named Rachel. They're relying on technology, Olivia explained. But what happens if something goes wrong? What if their equipment fails? Or what if someone or something finds a way around it? Rachel frowned. You think they're vulnerable? They're arrogant, Liam interjected, leaning back in his chair. Arrogance makes people sloppy. And if Jack Harper is anywhere near them, they're going to regret underestimating us. At the mention of Jack's name, Olivia turned to Liam. Have we heard back from him yet? Not yet, Liam replied. But knowing Jack, he's already figured out how to mess with them. Let's just hope he doesn't do anything too crazy. Meanwhile, in Alaska, Maggie Dawson was making her own preparations. A former park ranger turned activist, Maggie knew the land better than most. She had spent years working to protect Alaska's wildlife and ecosystems, often clashing with developers and oil companies who sought to exploit the region's resources. Now she saw the Vorin as another threat, one that needed to be dealt with carefully. Maggie had set up a makeshift command center in an abandoned cabin deep in the woods. Maps covered the walls, marked with notes and sketches detailing the layout of the Vorin camp. Around her, a small group of volunteers worked tirelessly, gathering supplies and brainstorming strategies. Some were locals, others environmentalists, who had traveled from across the country after hearing about the alien arrival. All shared a common goal, to defend their home. We need to hit them where it hurts, Maggie said, addressing the group. Her voice was calm but firm, commanding attention without raising it. Their tech might be advanced, but they don't know this land like we do. If we can disrupt their operations, even just a little, it'll throw them off balance. One of the volunteers, a wiry teenager named Ethan, raised his hand hesitantly. What about weapons? Should we bring guns? No, Maggie replied immediately. We're not here to fight. We're here to outsmart them. Traps, distractions, anything to make them second-guess themselves. That's how we win, Ethan nodded, though he still looked uncertain. Maggie understood his hesitation. Facing off. Against aliens wasn't exactly part of the job description, but she believed in their ability to adapt, to use the environment to their advantage. After all, that was what survival was all about. On the second night of the Vorons' arrival, the temperature plummeted and a fierce wind swept through the valley. Snow swirled in chaotic patterns, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Inside their shielded camp, the aliens remained oblivious to the storm raging outside. Kelther paced back and forth, growing increasingly irritated by the lack of challenges. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, glaring at the swirling snow beyond. "The shield. Is this the best this planet has to offer?" His subordinate, a shorter Voron named Viren, approached cautiously. "Perhaps the humans exaggerated their claims," Viren suggested. "Maybe this world truly is as soft as it appears." Kelther scowled. "No, there must be more. Something we're missing." As if on cue, a distant howl cut through the night. The sound sent shivers down the spines of even the hardened Voron warriors. Moments later, glowing eyes appeared in the darkness beyond the shield, reflecting eerily off the energy barrier. A pack of wolves had arrived, drawn by the scent of intruders in their territory. "Ah, finally," Kelther said, a hint of satisfaction creeping into his voice. "Let us see how these creatures fare against our defenses." The wolves circled the camp, their growls growing louder and more aggressive. One of them lunged at the shield, only to be repelled by a burst of energy. Undeterred, the rest followed suit, slamming their bodies against the invisible barrier again and again. The Voron watched smugly, convinced their technology would hold. But then, something unexpected happened. From somewhere nearby, a series of bright flares shot into the sky, illuminating the area in bursts of red and orange light. The sudden brightness startled the wolves, causing them to scatter in confusion. At the same time, a loud rumbling sound echoed through the valley, growing louder with each passing second. Kelther spun around, searching for the source of the disturbance. Before he could react, an avalanche roared down the mountainside, sending tons of snow crashing toward the camp. The energy shield held, but much of their equipment was buried beneath the icy deluge. "What is this?" Kelther demanded, his voice rising in anger. "Who dares interfere?" Hidden among the trees, Jack Harper lowered his flare gun and smirked. "Welcome to Earth, boys," he whispered to himself. "Hope you brought your winter coats." The avalanche had left the Voron camp in chaos. Their once pristine equipment was now buried under layers of snow and ice, their energy shields flickering as they struggled to maintain power. Kelther paced furiously, his golden armor dulled by a fine layer of frost that clung to everything. His glowing eyes darted around the perimeter, searching for any sign of who or what had caused the disruption. "This is unacceptable," he growled, his voice sharp enough to cut through the biting wind. "Who dares sabotage us?" Viren, his ever-loyal subordinate, hesitated before responding. "It could be the humans," he suggested cautiously. "Perhaps they are testing our resolve." Kelther sneered at the idea. "Humans? Weaklings who rely on machines to survive? No, this reeks of something else. Something cunning." What Kelther didn't realize was how right he was. Hidden high above the camp, perched on a rocky outcrop, Jack Harper watched the aliens scramble to dig out their gear. The avalanche had been his doing, triggered by carefully placed explosives he'd set earlier that day. He knew it wouldn't destroy them outright, not yet, but it would buy time and plant seeds of doubt in their minds. That was the goal, make them second-guess every move they made. Jack adjusted the scarf around his neck, shielding his face from the cold. He wasn't alone up there. A pair of binoculars hung around his neck, and beside him lay a rifle loaded with tranquilizer darts. Not lethal, but enough to slow down anyone or anything that tried to follow him. Jack wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for an edge. And so far, he liked what he saw. Back at the research base in Montana, Liam, Carter, and Olivia Grant were analyzing footage sent by drones monitoring the Voron camp. The images showed the aftermath of the avalanche. Mounds of snow covering half the alien equipment. Several Voron warriors shoveling frantically, and Kelther pacing like a caged animal. It was clear the aliens weren't used to setbacks or interference. "Looks like someone's been busy," Liam said with a grin, leaning closer to the screen. "You think it's Jack?" Olivia nodded, her lips curling into a small smile. "Has to be. Who else would know how to trigger an avalanche without getting caught?" Liam chuckled. "Guy's got guts, I'll give him that. But I hope he knows what he's doing. If those aliens catch him." "They won't," Olivia interrupted firmly. "Jack's smart. He's not going to walk into their trap. Besides, we're not sitting here twiddling our thumbs either." She gestured to the table behind them, where Maggie Dawson and her team of volunteers were hard at work. Maps of the area were spread out, marked with potential weak points in the Voron defenses. Nearby, crates filled with supplies sat ready to be transported to Alaska. Maggie herself was hunched over a laptop, typing furiously as she coordinated efforts between local hunters, park rangers, and environmental activists. "We've got decoys," Maggie explained, pointing to a diagram of the Voron camp. "Fake. Predator calls, tripwires, even some old bear traps we've modified to scare them off. If we can keep them guessing, they'll never see us coming." One of the volunteers, a burly man named Hank, raised a hand. "What about weapons? Shouldn't we bring something more than flares and noisemakers?" "No guns," Maggie replied sharply. "We're not here to kill them. We're here to show them they picked the wrong planet to mess with. Trust me, fear is a better weapon than bullets." Hank grumbled but didn't argue further. Maggie's confidence was infectious, and everyone in the room seemed willing to follow her lead. Even Liam and Olivia found themselves inspired by her determination. By the third night, the Voron were growing desperate. Their attempts to repair their equipment were slow and frustrating, hindered by the constant barrage of distractions orchestrated by Jack and his newfound allies. Every time they thought they'd gained the upper hand, another problem arose. Strange noises in the woods, sudden shifts in the weather, or animals appearing unnaturally close to their camp. It was as if the land itself was turning against them. Kelther refused to admit defeat, though. Instead, he doubled down on his arrogance, blaming the humans for their struggles. "They hide in the shadows, striking from afar," he declared during one of his increasingly frequent rants. "Cowards, all of them. On our worlds, such tactics would mean death." His words did little to boost morale among his crew. Many of them had begun questioning whether Earth was worth the trouble. After all, they hadn't come here to conquer. It was supposed to be a demonstration, a chance to prove their superiority. Now they were knee-deep in snow, fighting off wolves and avalanches and whatever else this strange planet threw at them. Unbeknownst to Kelther, the humans were only getting started. That same night, Jack led a group of volunteers deep into the forest surrounding the Voron camp. Among them were Maggie, Ethan, and a few others brave enough to venture close to the aliens. Armed with flare guns, tripwire kits, and a few homemade EMP devices designed by Liam and Olivia, they moved silently through the trees, their breaths forming clouds in the freezing air. "Remember the plan," Jack whispered as they approached the edge of the camp. "Set up the traps first. Once they're distracted, we hit them with the EMPs. Got it?" Everyone nodded, their faces pale but determined. Jack split them into pairs, assigning each group a section of the perimeter to cover. As they worked, the forest seemed eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. Even the wind died down, leaving only the sound of crunching snow beneath their boots. When the traps were in place, Jack gave the signal. Flares shot into the sky, painting the landscape in bright hues of red and orange. Almost instantly, the forest came alive with noise. Recordings of wolf howls and bear roars blared from hidden speakers, creating the illusion of an impending attack. The Vorons scrambled to respond, their energy shields flaring as they prepared for combat. But the real strike came moments later. Jack and his team activated the MP devices, sending pulses of electromagnetic energy rippling through the air. The Vorons' technology sputtered and failed, plunging their camp into darkness. For the first time since their arrival, they were truly vulnerable. "What is happening?" Kelthur shouted, his voice tinged with panic. "Restore the shields. It's no use." Viaran replied, frantically pressing buttons on a malfunctioning console. "The systems are dead." In the chaos, Jack and his team slipped away, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as they had arrived. By the time the Voron managed to reboot their equipment, there was no trace of their attackers, only the lingering sense that they were being hunted. The next morning, Kelthur stood outside the remains of his camp, staring at the horizon with a mixture of anger and disbelief. His golden armor was scratched and dented, his once imposing presence diminished by exhaustion. For the first time, cracks were beginning to show in his facade of invincibility. "Tell me," he demanded, turning to Viaran, "do you still believe this world is soft?" Viaran hesitated, unsure how to respond. Finally, he shook his head. "No, Commander. This world, it fights back." Kelthur clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Then we will fight harder. We will not leave until we have proven our dominance. Do you understand?" "Yes, Commander," Viaran replied. Though his tone lacked conviction. As Kelthur turned away, his mind raced with questions. Who were these humans? How had they managed to outwit him at every turn? And perhaps most importantly, what else did this planet have in store for them? Far away, hidden among the trees, Jack Harper watched the scene unfold through his binoculars. Beside him, Maggie smiled grimly. "They're learning," she said softly. "But they haven't seen anything." "Yet." Jack nodded, lowering the binoculars. "Let's give them another lesson." The Voron camp was a mess. Equipment lay scattered across the snow, some pieces still sparking from the EMP attack. The energy shields, once a symbol of their technological superiority, flickered weakly, barely holding back the biting cold and howling winds. Kelthur stood in the center of it all, his golden armor dulled by frost and grime. For the first time since arriving on Earth, he looked less like a conqueror and more like a man out of his depth. His crew moved around him, trying to repair the damage. Some worked on restoring power to their devices, while others dug through the snow to recover buried supplies. But frustration hung heavy in the air. Every step forward seemed to be met with 2 steps back. The humans or whoever was behind these attacks were relentless. And worse, they were unpredictable. "This is not survival," Kelthur muttered under his breath, his glowing eyes scanning the horizon. "This is harassment." Viaran approached cautiously, holding a damaged scanner in one hand. "Commander, we've identified the source of the electromagnetic pulses," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "It's crude technology, but effective against our systems. Whoever made it knows what they're doing." Kelthur snatched the scanner from Vran's hands, examining it closely. His expression darkened. "Crude? You call this crude?" He gestured angrily at the chaos around them. "They've turned our own tools against us. This isn't just sabotage, it's strategy. Strategy we failed to anticipate." Viaran swallowed hard, taking a step back. "What do you want us to do?" "Commander?" Kelthur didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared into the distance, his mind racing. These humans, or whatever they were, had proven themselves far more resourceful than he'd expected. They didn't rely on brute force or advanced weapons. Instead, they used the environment, turning nature itself into a weapon. It was infuriating and impressive. "Adapt," Kelther finally said, his voice low but firm. "We came here to demonstrate our resilience, did we not? Then let us adapt, strengthen the shields, double the patrols. And find me whoever is responsible for this." VR nodded quickly, eager to escape his commander's wrath. "Yes, Commander." At once. As Viren hurried away, Kelther clenched, his fists, his jaw tightening. He had underestimated this planet and its inhabitants. That mistake would not happen again not far from the Voron camp. Jack Harper and Maggie Dawson sat huddled inside a small cabin deep in the woods. A fire crackled in the corner, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Around them, volunteers busied themselves preparing for the next phase of their plan. Maps covered the table, marked with new traps and ambush points. Supplies were stacked neatly against the wall, ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "They're getting smarter," he said, breaking the silence. "The EMPs won't work forever. Sooner or later, they'll find a way to counter them." Maggie nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Then we'll have to change tactics. Keep them guessing. Hit them where they least expect it." "That's easier said than done," Ethan chimed in, looking up from the map he'd been studying. "They've got those shields. How are we supposed to get past them?" "We don't need to break through," Maggie replied, tapping the map with her finger. "We just need to make them think we can. Distraction is our best weapon. While they're focused on defending themselves, we hit their supply lines. Without food and equipment, they'll crumble." Ethan frowned but didn't argue. He trusted Maggie's judgment, even if her plan seemed risky. Besides, so far they'd been working. Jack stood up, stretching his stiff muscles. "All right then, let's get moving. We've got work to do." That night, the Voron camp was eerily quiet. The aliens had reinforced their energy shields, creating a dome of light that glowed faintly in the darkness. Patrols moved methodically along the perimeter, their glowing eyes scanning the forest for any sign of movement. Inside the camp, engineers worked tirelessly to repair the damaged equipment, their hands trembling from exhaustion. But despite their efforts, something felt off as the wind carried strange noises, whispers, creaks, and distant howls that sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened warriors. Shadows danced just beyond the edge of the shield, too quick to catch but impossible to ignore. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting. Kelther paced back and forth, his patience wearing thin. "Enough of this," he growled, stopping in front of Viren. "Send out a patrol. Find me whoever is responsible for this." "Madness," Viren hesitated. "Commander, it could be a trap. I don't care." Kelther snapped, his voice echoing through the camp. "If they want a fight, we'll give them one. Now go." Reluctantly, Viren obeyed, gathering a group of warriors and leading them out into the darkness. The moment they stepped beyond the shield, the temperature dropped sharply, the wind biting at their exposed skin. Their glowing eyes scanned the trees, searching for any sign of danger. They didn't have to wait long. A sudden flash of light erupted in the distance, followed by the sound of cracking wood. The patrol froze, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Before they could decide, another flare shot into the sky, illuminating the forest in bursts of red and orange. Shadows darted between the trees, too fast to identify but close enough to unnerve. "It's a trick," one of the warriors shouted, raising his weapon. "They're trying to lure us in." "Stay together," Viren ordered, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "Do not." His words were cut short as a loud snap echoed through the air. One of the warriors cried out, stumbling forward as his foot caught in a hidden snare. The rest of the patrol turned to help him, only to trigger more traps. Tripwires yanked at their legs, sending them tumbling into the snow. Flares exploded around them, blinding them temporarily and filling the air with smoke. In the confusion, Jack Harper and his team struck. Emerging from the shadows, they fired tranquilizer darts at the disoriented aliens, aiming for exposed areas of flesh. The darts weren't lethal, but they were enough to incapacitate. Within minutes, half the patrol lay unconscious in the snow, their glowing eyes dimming as the sedatives took effect. Viren managed to evade capture, retreating back toward the camp. But as he ran, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being toyed with. These humans, they weren't fighting fair. They weren't fighting at all. They were playing a game, and the Vorin were losing. Back at the cabin, Jack and Maggie listened to the distant commotion through a set of headphones connected to microphones placed near the Vorin camp. The sounds of chaos brought grim smiles to their faces. They fell for it, Ethan said, grinning as he adjusted the volume. Just like you said they would. Maggie nodded, though her smile faded quickly. Don't celebrate yet. They'll regroup, and next time they'll be ready for us. Then we'll be ready for them, Jack replied, his tone serious. We've shown them we're not afraid. Now we need to show them we're not going anywhere. Liam Carter and Olivia Grant joined the conversation via a video call, their faces appearing on a small laptop screen. How's it going? Liam asked, leaning closer to the camera. Better than expected, Maggie answered. We've taken out part of their patrol and disrupted their operations. But Maggie's right, we're not done yet. Olivia nodded, her expression thoughtful. We've been analyzing their tech. There's a flaw in their shielding system, a frequency that disrupts it temporarily. If we can replicate it, we might be able to disable their defenses completely. Jack raised an eyebrow. You think you can pull that off? It's risky, Olivia admitted. But if it works, it'll give you the opening you need. Jack glanced at Maggie, who gave him a small nod. Do it, he said. We'll handle the rest. By dawn, the Vorin camp was on high alert. Kelther stood at the center of it all, his anger boiling over. The failed patrol had returned, battered and bruised, their report only fueling his rage. These humans are cowards, Kelther shouted, addressing his crew. They strike from the shadows, using tricks and deception. But I will not tolerate this mockery of combat. We are the Vorin, warriors of Deathworlds, and we will crush them. His words rallied the remaining troops, but beneath the surface, doubt lingered. For every boastful declaration, there was a question left unanswered. Could they truly win against an enemy that refused to play by the rules? Unbeknownst to Kelther, the humans were already planning their next move. Hidden in the forest, Jack Harper loaded another flare gun, his breath visible in the cold morning air. Beside him, Maggie tightened the straps on her backpack, her expression resolute. Round 2 starts now, she whispered, and with that, they disappeared into the trees, ready to deliver another blow to the invaders who had dared to call Earth soft. The Vorin were running out of options. Days had passed since their arrival in Alaska, and what was supposed to be a demonstration of their dominance had turned into a humiliating struggle for survival. Their once impressive camp now resembled a battlefield, littered with broken equipment and half-finished repairs. The energy shields flickered constantly, straining under the relentless attacks from Jack Harper and his team. Kelther paced furiously, his golden armor dulled by frost and frustration. This is unacceptable, he growled, his glowing eyes scanning the horizon. We are the Vorin, conquerors of Deathworlds. Yet here we are, humiliated by primitive beings. Viarn stood nearby, his head bowed as if bracing for another outburst. He knew better than to speak unless spoken to, especially when Kelthur was in this mood. But even he couldn't deny the truth. Earth was proving far more challenging than anyone had anticipated. Kelthur stopped pacing and turned to face his crew. "Enough of this nonsense," he said, his voice sharp. "We will not leave until we have proven our superiority, strengthen the shields, increase patrols, and find me whoever is responsible for these attacks." His words carried authority, but there was an edge of desperation beneath them. For all his bravado, Kelthur couldn't hide the cracks forming in his confidence. The humans, or whatever they were, had pushed him to his limits, and he knew it. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Jack Harper and Maggie Dawson prepared for their next move. Hidden in a makeshift shelter, they pored over maps and discussed strategies with their team. Ethan sat nearby, tinkering with one of the EMP devices sent by Liam and Olivia. The device was small but powerful, designed to disrupt the Voron's shielding system temporarily. "All right," Jack said, pointing to a spot on the map. "If we hit them here, right at the edge of their shield, we can create a weak point. Once the shield drops, we'll send in the decoys." Maggie nodded, her expression focused. "And while they're distracted, we'll sabotage their supplies. Without food and gear, they won't last long." Ethan looked up from the EMP device. His brow furrowed. "What about reinforcements? What if they call for backup?" "They won't," Maggie replied confidently. "Their pride won't let them admit failure. Besides, we've already shown them they're not invincible. Another blow like this, and they'll start questioning everything." Jack grinned, slapping Ethan on the shoulder. "Exactly. Let's give them something to think about." That night, the Voron camp was eerily quiet. The aliens had doubled their patrols, sweeping the perimeter with glowing eyes and advanced sensors. Inside the dome of light created by their energy shields, engineers worked tirelessly to reinforce the barriers. But despite their efforts, tension hung heavy in the air. Every shadow, every sound set their nerves on edge. Kelthur stood at the center of the camp, his arms crossed as he surveyed his crew. "Stay vigilant," he ordered. "They will strike again soon." As if on cue, a loud snap echoed through the forest, followed by the distant howl of wolves. The Voron froze, their glowing eyes darting toward the source of the noise. Moments later, a flare shot into the sky, illuminating the trees in bursts of red and orange light. "There!" one of the warriors shouted, raising his weapon. "It's a trap." Before anyone could react, another flare exploded nearby, followed by the sound of cracking branches. Shadows darted between the trees, too fast to catch but close enough to unnerve. The Voron fired blindly into the forest, their energy weapons lighting up the darkness. But the real attack came from above. Hidden in the treetops, Jack Harper and Hodgson, his team activated the EMP devices, sending pulses of electromagnetic energy rippling through the air. The Voron shields flickered and failed, plunging the camp into darkness. For the first time since their arrival, they were completely exposed. "Shields down!" Viarn shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Restore them immediately. It's no use." One of the engineers cried, frantically pressing buttons on a malfunctioning console. "The systems are dead." In the chaos, Jack and his team struck. Emerging from the shadows, they hurled homemade grenades filled with smoke and noisemakers into the camp. The explosion sent the Voron scrambling, their glowing eyes dimming as they struggled to regain control. Meanwhile, Maggie led a second. Grouped to the supply tents, cutting open crates and scattering their contents across the snow dot, by the time the Voron managed to reboot their shields, the damage was done. Supplies lay scattered, equipment was damaged beyond repair, and morale was at an all-time low. Kelthur stood in the center of the wreckage, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Who are you?" he shouted into the darkness, his voice trembling with anger. "Show yourselves," but there was no response. Only the sound of the wind blowing through the trees. Back at the cabin, Jack and Maggie listened to the distant commotion through their headphones. The sounds of confusion and panic brought grim satisfaction to their faces. "We got them good," Ethan said, grinning as he adjusted the volume. "Just like you planned." Maggie nodded, though her smile faded quickly. "Don't celebrate yet. They'll regroup, and next time they'll be ready for us." "Then we'll be ready for them," Jack replied, his tone serious. "We've shown them we're not afraid. Now we need to show them we're not going anywhere." Liam Carter and Olivia Grant joined the conversation via a video call, their faces appearing on a small laptop screen. "How's it going?" Liam asked, leaning closer to the camera. "Better than expected," Maggie answered. "We've disrupted their operations and scattered their supplies." "But Maggie's right. We're not done yet." Olivia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We've been analyzing their tech. There's a flaw in their shielding system, a frequency that disrupts it temporarily. If we can replicate it, we might be able to disable their defenses completely." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You think you can pull that off?" "It's risky," Olivia admitted. "But if it works, it'll give you the opening you need." Jack glanced at Maggie, who gave him a small nod. "Do it," he said. "We'll handle the rest." By dawn, the Voron camp was on high alert. Kelthur stood at the center of it all, his anger boiling over. The failed patrol had returned, battered and bruised, their report only fueling his rage. "These humans are cowards," Kelthur shouted, addressing his crew. "They strike from the shadows, using tricks and deception. But I will not tolerate this mockery of combat. We are the Voron, warriors of Deathworlds, and we will crush them." His words rallied the remaining troops, but beneath the surface, doubt lingered. For every boastful declaration, there was a question left unanswered. Could they truly win against an enemy that refused to play by the rules? Unbeknownst to Kelthur, the humans were already planning their next move. Hidden in the forest, Jack Harper loaded another flare gun, his breath visible in the cold morning air. Beside him, Maggie tightened the straps on her backpack, her expression resolute. "Round 2 starts now," she whispered, and with that, they disappeared into the trees, ready to deliver another blow to the invaders who had dared to call Earth soft. The final blow came on the 5th night. Using the frequency provided by Olivia and Liam, Jack and his team launched a coordinated attack on the Voron camp. The EMP devices disabled the shields long enough for Maggie's group to infiltrate the perimeter. Armed with tranquilizer darts and smoke bombs, they targeted key areas of the camp, creating chaos and confusion. Kelthur watched helplessly as his crew fell apart, their discipline crumbling under the relentless assault. For the first time, fear crept into his glowing eyes. He realized too late that Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a force to be reckoned with. When the sun rose the next morning, the Voron ship lifted off, leaving behind a trail of smoke and shattered pride. Kelthur's parting words were defiant, but his tone betrayed his defeat. "You may have won this battle," he said, his voice echoing through the empty camp. "But your species is still weak. You cling to your fragile world instead of venturing beyond it. Perhaps we misjudged you, not because you were strong, but because you were too afraid to leave." As the ship disappeared into the sky, Jack Harper stepped out of the trees, watching it go with a mixture of relief and satisfaction. Beside him, Maggie smiled faintly. "They'll be back," she said softly. "But next time, they'll think twice before underestimating us." Jack nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Let them come. We'll be ready." The Voron ship disappeared into the sky, leaving behind a trail of smoke and broken promises. Kelther's final words hung in the air like an unspoken challenge, but for Jack Harper and his team, it was a victory. A hard-fought, exhausting victory, but a victory nonetheless. The aliens had come boasting about their survival skills, their strength, their dominance, and they had been humbled by humans armed with nothing more than grit, ingenuity, and teamwork. Back at the cabin, the group gathered around the fire to rest and regroup. Their faces were tired, smudged with dirt and frost, but there was a quiet pride in their eyes. For days they had worked tirelessly, risking everything to protect their home. And now, as the sun rose over the frozen wilderness, they allowed themselves a moment to breathe. Maggie sat closest to the fire, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. Her expression was calm, but her mind was already racing ahead. "This isn't over," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Kelther may have left, but he won't forget this. If they ever come back, they'll be ready." Jack nodded, leaning back in his chair. "Then we'll be ready too. We showed them what happens when you mess with Earth. Next time, maybe they'll think twice before landing here." Ethan grinned, still buzzing from the adrenaline of the night before. "Man, did you see their faces when the shields went down? Priceless. I thought Kelther was going to explode." Everyone laughed, the sound echoing through the small cabin. It was a rare moment of levity after weeks of tension and danger. But even as they joked, they knew Maggie was right. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. In Montana, Liam Carter and Olivia Grant were reviewing the data collected during the confrontation. The research base buzzed with activity as scientists and analysts pored over footage, sensor readings, and debris left behind by the Voron. Liam leaned over a table covered in maps and notes, pointing to a diagram of the alien ship. "We got lucky," he admitted, shaking his head. "If they'd brought more firepower or stayed longer, we might not have been able to hold them off." Olivia nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. But luck wasn't the only factor. It was strategy, teamwork, adaptability. That's what gave us the edge. She gestured to a screen displaying a graph of the Voron's shield frequencies. "And thanks to your EMP devices, we found a way to exploit their tech. If they do come back, we'll be better prepared." Liam smiled faintly, though his expression remained serious. "You really think they'll return?" "I don't know," Olivia replied honestly. "But if they do, it won't be for another demonstration. Next time, it'll be for revenge." The weight of her words settled over the room. Everyone understood the stakes. This encounter had been a wake-up call, not just for the Voron, but for humanity. Earth wasn't alone in the universe anymore. And while the planet had proven itself capable of defending against invaders, it was clear that preparation would be key moving forward. News of the Voron's defeat spread quickly. Governments around the world held emergency meetings, debating how to prepare for future encounters. Some called for increased funding for space exploration and defense systems, while others argued for diplomacy, hoping to avoid conflict altogether. Scientists like Liam and Olivia became overnight celebrities, their insights sought after by everyone from military leaders to news anchors. But despite the attention, Liam and Olivia remained focused on their work. They published a detailed report on the Voron's technology, sharing their findings with researchers worldwide. Their goal wasn't fame or recognition, it was understanding. Understanding not just the aliens, but humanity's place in the universe. "We've always thought of ourselves as fragile," Olivia said during one interview. "But this proves we're stronger than we give ourselves credit for. We adapt, we innovate, we fight for what matters." Her words resonated with people across the globe. For the first time, humanity felt united not by fear, but by hope. hoped that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they could face them together. Meanwhile, in Alaska, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get after an alien invasion. Jack Harper resumed his solitary existence, retreating deeper into the wilderness to avoid questions from reporters and government officials. He didn't need recognition. He had done what he set out to do. Protecting his home was reward enough. Maggie. Dawson stayed busy, organizing efforts to clean up the damage caused by the Voron and ensure the land recovered fully. She also worked with local communities to establish early warning systems in case of future visits. Her activism gained national attention, inspiring others to take action in their own regions. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Maggie stood on a hill overlooking Denali National Park. The landscape stretched out before her, vast and untamed. It was beautiful, but also a reminder of how fragile it all was. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Ethan asked, joining her at the edge of the hill. Maggie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the sky, her thoughts drifting to the stars above. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know. But if they do come back, we'll be ready." Ethan nodded, his expression determined. "Yeah, we will." Far above Earth, aboard their retreating ship, Kelther stared out at the blue-green orb fading into the distance. His golden armor gleamed faintly in the dim light, but his glowing eyes were clouded with doubt. For centuries, the Voron had prided themselves on their ability to conquer any environment, overcome any obstacle. Yet here they were, defeated not by brute force, but by cunning, creativity, and sheer determination. Viren approached cautiously, unsure whether to speak. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Commander, what do we tell the council?" Kelther didn't turn around. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "We tell them the truth. That Earth is unlike any world we've encountered. Its inhabitants are resourceful, resilient, and unpredictable. They lack our technology, but they possess something far more dangerous: unity." Viren frowned, confused. "Unity?" "Yes," Kelther replied, his tone bitter. "They fought as one, used their environment as a weapon, outsmarted us at every turn. We underestimated them, and it cost us." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence, carrying them further away from the planet that had humbled them. Kelther clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Mark my words," he said finally, turning to face Viren. "We will return. And when we do, we will not make the same mistake twice." Weeks passed and life on Earth continued. People went back to their routines, though the memory of the Voron lingered in the back of their minds. Governments invested in new technologies, scientists studied the debris left behind, and communities came together to prepare for whatever might come next. Liam and Olivia returned to their labs, driven by a renewed sense of purpose. They knew the universe was vast and full of mysteries, but they also knew humanity was capable of facing them head-on. Whether it was exploring distant planets or defending their own, they were ready. Jack Harper watched the stars from his cabin, his rifle resting against the wall. He didn't trust the aliens to stay away forever, but he trusted himself to handle whatever came next. And Maggie Dawson stood on the same hill where she had watched the sunset weeks earlier, her resolve stronger than ever. She believed in humanity's ability to adapt, to thrive, to survive. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain: Earth wasn't just a planet, it was home. And anyone who tried to take it would have to answer to its people.